After being reborn, the first thing I did was submit my application to study abroad, just to get far away from Luis. In my previous life, I gave up my career for him, bore his children, and spent my life taking care of everything. But his final wish before dying was to divorce me so he could be buried with his first love. Even our 2 children knelt down and begged me to fulfill the love story between Luis and Julia, calling them star-crossed lovers. Utterly heartbroken, I withered away and died. I never expected to return to the time before I married Luis. This time, I decided to give them what they wanted. Chapter 1. When my application was approved, Roxana was so shocked she spilled her coffee. I quickly handed her a few napkins. She didn't bother to wipe it up. She just stared at me, looking completely thrown off. Aren't you getting married soon? Did you discuss this with Professor Luis? Just last week, I was excitedly telling her about the wedding plans. Now, suddenly, I'm leaving the country. Yes, it's abrupt, but... Luis. That name pricked my heart like a needle. His image popped up in my mind. Handsome, with sharp features and a cold, distant air. He was the youngest and most sought-after professor in school, a brilliant researcher. Everyone admired him. Women lined up just to get his attention. He ignored them all, until he met me. Everyone envied me for marrying such a man, but only I knew. He was in love with the shadow of another woman he saw in me. I lowered my eyes and said calmly, "This is my only chance to pursue further studies abroad. I can't let it slip by. As for the wedding, it'll have to be called off." Chapter 2. Before leaving, I asked Roxana not to tell Luis about my plans. Things weren't finalized yet, and I was afraid he might try to interfere. Although now, his heart seems fully occupied with Julia, I doubt he even notices me anymore. I met Luis 2 years ago. I had just started teaching at the university, and he was already a well-known professor. I fell for him at first sight, and he seemed to reciprocate, so we naturally got together. He's a quiet man, not fond of talking. He never whispered sweet nothings to me, but sometimes, I'd catch him staring at me in a daze. I thought that was just how he expressed affection. Only later did I find out, from certain angles, my face looked a lot like Julia's. We were together for 2 years. Everything seemed stable. We were even preparing for the wedding. I was happily picking dates and dresses. That's when Julia showed up, with her son. Only then did I learn Luis had a first love. They had been together from high school through college, 7 whole years. Chapter 3. It happened the same way in my previous life. Julia showed up crying, all teary-eyed and pitiful, claiming her husband was abusive and begging Luis to help her. Luis's heart quickly turned toward her. He found a place for her and her son to live, hired a lawyer to help her sue her abusive husband. But somehow, he had no time to help me pick out a wedding dress. I arranged the entire wedding alone. He only showed up briefly, like a guest. After we got married, he got the opportunity to study abroad. Julia, under the excuse of thanking him, followed him there. And me? I stayed behind to take care of his mother after she had a stroke. From then on, we lived in separate worlds, rarely seeing each other. Later, I gave birth to our 2 children. My daughter was born with a weak constitution, and taking care of her took everything I had. So I quit my job. I gave up my career entirely. I was confined to a tiny world, devoting myself fully, giving every ounce of strength. Meanwhile, he was off traveling with Julia, watching the northern lights in Iceland, admiring penguins in Alaska. I cried. I argued, but all I got was his cold reply. "Can you stop acting like a crazy nagging wife?" Even the children I raised with my own hands began to resent me. To them, I was just a housewife with no accomplishments, not as elegant, not as cultured as Aunt Julia. They said their well-educated father and the graceful, refined Julia were the perfect match. I never imagined I would raise such ungrateful brats. Then Luis got seriously ill. His last wish before dying? To divorce me, so he could be buried with Julia. Our children pleaded with me to let those 2 tragic lovers be together, but I couldn't accept it. I'd sacrificed everything for this family, to the point of falling sick from exhaustion. There was a night when my daughter had a high fever. I sat beside her the whole time, and by morning, my hair had turned white. How could I accept this ending? What gave them the right I refused. No matter what. Julia was so heartbroken she fell ill. Her son even broke into my house in the middle of the night to threaten me, trying to stand up for his mother, but he lost control, and the knife went straight into my heart. I collapsed. In the final moment of my life, a trace of regret finally surfaced. My life should have been bright and full of possibilities. I never should have given up my career, never should have kept compromising. But now I have a second chance. I've been reborn to the time before I married Luis. And it's not too late. Chapter 4. When I got back from school, I found the house empty. This apartment belonged to Luis. Since we were about to get married, I moved in to live with him, but we had no intimacy, just separate rooms. Usually by this time, he'd be home, elegantly reading in his study, waiting for me to cook dinner. But today, he was gone, and I didn't need to guess where he was. Julia had been visiting for days. He'd been busy running around for her. In my past life, this would have made me anxious. I'd be suspicious, restless. But now, I felt nothing. I opened the fridge, took out ingredients, and made dinner for myself. A fresh steak, seared until golden on both sides, drizzled with a special sauce, filling the room with savory aroma. To celebrate my soon-to-be freedom, I went to grab a bottle of champagne, but before I could pop the cork, the door opened. Luis walked in. Chapter 5. And of course, Luis wasn't alone. As expected, Julia and her son Elias were right behind him, even though Luis had already rented her an apartment elsewhere. Julia still dropped by often. This time, the three of them were wearing matching family-look outfits, like a perfect little family. Elias held a few toys and balloons. They were chatting and laughing, until they saw me. The room went silent. Luis paused awkwardly, then explained. Elias said he's never been to an amusement park with his dad before. So I took him. Selena, don't take it the wrong way. I looked up, voice dripping with sarcasm. Oh, you're his father now? He froze, at a loss for words. Julia stepped forward, eyes full of guilt. Selena, I'm so sorry. It's my fault. I asked Luis to go with us. If you're upset, blame me. I turned away. No point wasting energy on mockery. Flatly, I replied. Just joking. I don't mind. The atmosphere instantly grew awkward. Just then, Elias ran to the dining table and saw my dinner. Wow, steak! I want some. I want some. He reached for it. I swiftly picked up the plate. Nope, not for you. Elias instantly burst into tears. Julia hurried to pick him up, wiping his tears. She said timidly, Selena, are we not welcome here? I guess I shouldn't come eat at your place anymore. Luis frowned and scolded me. It's just a few meals. Was that really necessary? The kid likes your cooking, so what if you make a little more? It's not like we can't afford it. Seeing Elias still sobbing, he took him from Julia's arms. Come on, Uncle Luis will take you out to eat. And just like that, the three of them left again. As she walked out, Julia gave me a smug, veiled look, but I remained completely unfazed. After they left, I popped the champagne. Pop! The cork shot out, foam bubbling at the mouth of the bottle. I poured myself a glass. Luis didn't even notice. Not only had I skipped cooking for Julia and her son, I hadn't made his dinner either. I looked at the digital calendar on the wall. 30 days. In 30 days, I'll be free from him for good. This drink is for finally crawling out of the mud of my past life. No more compromising, no more confusion. From now on, cheers to my new life. Chapter 6. After finishing my meal, I rested for a bit before heading out. I still had class that afternoon, even though I'd be leaving soon. I wanted to fulfill my responsibilities until the end. After class, I returned home briefly. Luis still wasn't there. I grabbed my bank card and headed to the mall. I was an orphan, raised by my uncle's family, but they treated me terribly. They made me do all the chores, barely fed me, and refused to pay for my tuition. When I was in elementary school, I met a kind teacher. Miss Monica was my lifesaver. Back then, I never had enough to eat, so she always brought an extra lunch for me. She knew my grades were weak and took the time to tutor me. Later, when I couldn't afford middle school tuition, she supported me financially. Over the years, she became the closest person in my life. I never told my uncle's family about my engagement to Luis. Only her. Now that I've decided to call off the wedding, I needed to tell her personally. Besides, it's been so long, I really missed her, so I decided to visit. But first, I wanted to buy her some gifts. Chapter 7. At the mall. I chose practical gifts, since Miss Monica didn't like flashy things. Some American ginseng, gelatin tonic, a soft scarf, warm knee pads, items for health and comfort. As I walked past a luxury boutique, I saw Luis. Beside him, Julia was holding a handbag, gazing up at him with adoration. I didn't walk over. In fact, I stepped even farther away. If Luis wanted to spend money on her, fine. It wasn't my money. To be honest, Luis's family was quite average. Julia's husband, however, came from wealth. Despite being abusive, he never lacked for cash. Julia was used to living lavishly. In my past life, Luis became rich only after studying abroad and helping a nearly bankrupt company turn around. He became a shareholder. But this time, things are going to be different. Chapter 8. Luis came home very late. I had class tonight, he said vaguely, offering an excuse. Even though I knew it was a lie. I didn't expose him. What's the point? He knew it would upset me. So he just didn't say the truth, and I had no interest in starting a fight. I quietly drank my milk. I've had trouble sleeping lately, so I've gotten used to having warm milk before bed. Luis hesitated before speaking. I know you're not comfortable with me being close to Julia, but she's a vulnerable woman. Her husband abused her. It's tragic. She came to me for help. How could I turn her away? It's not just her. I'd help anyone who asked. I didn't respond. He shook his head, as if giving in. If it bothers you that much, I'll keep my distance from her. Then, from behind his back, he took out a small gift bag and handed it to me. Inside was a bottle of perfume. Looking a little awkward, he said, I was a bit harsh this morning. I'm sorry. I've never really given you anything expensive, but I thought this perfume would suit you. I looked at him quietly, then smiled faintly and accepted it. I've never worn perfume, so how could it possibly suit me? Seeing me accept it, Luis seemed relieved. He looked like he wanted to say more, but I spoke first. I'm tired. I'll head to bed. He paused. All right. Chapter 9. I returned to my room, but of course, I didn't go to bed. Instead, I started packing, since I'd already decided to leave. It was no longer appropriate to keep my belongings here. I didn't have much, just some books and daily essentials. After all, I hadn't moved in that long ago. I set aside the important things first, packed my clothes into a suitcase, and tossed whatever wasn't necessary. It wasn't until I finished everything that I finally fell into a deep sleep, because I stayed up late. I got up late the next morning too. Early the next day, Luis knocked on my door. In the past, we were never this polite, but ever since Julia came into the picture, he'd become all formal. I opened the door and looked at him questioningly. Luis looked slightly embarrassed. I noticed you weren't up yet. Thought maybe you weren't feeling well, so I went out and bought breakfast. That was unexpected. Normally, I was the one who cooked. He rarely paid attention to such things. I was just about to head out, when he suddenly froze. His eyes trembled. He blocked my path. You're packing? You're leaving? My heart skipped a beat. Chapter 10. Luis had seen the mostly empty room, and the suitcase sitting in plain sight. That's why he asked. The reason I hadn't told him anything yet was because my study abroad approval hadn't come through. I was afraid something might go wrong, so before anything was confirmed, I didn't want to say a word. I went along with it and said, I'm planning to visit Miss Monica. I've been missing her. Luis knew about my past. He also knew how important Miss Monica was to me. I used to visit her often, so using her as a reason? Completely believable. Oh, I see. Luis looked relieved and smiled. We're getting married soon. It makes sense to go see her. If she's willing. We could even bring her here to stay with us. At the dining table. Breakfast included my favorites, soup dumplings and lotus porridge. Clearly, Luis had put in some thought. We ate quietly. Not a word was spoken. But the atmosphere felt surprisingly warm, like it had been before Julia showed up. Back then, there were no cracks between us. Just affection, and the shared dream of building a home together. Then suddenly, Luis spoke. How about I go with you? I froze. Before I could say anything, his phone rang. Julia's panicked voice came through the receiver. Luis, my husband found us. I'm scared. He's right outside. Please come help us. Luis's face changed instantly. He grabbed his coat and ran out the door. Chapter 11. After Luis left, I let out a quiet sigh of relief. Perfect. Now I didn't have to rack my brain for an excuse. If I let things continue naturally, he would eventually marry me without a second thought. But I couldn't let that happen. I refused to repeat the mistakes of my past life. I calmly finished breakfast, sent him a message, then took my suitcase and headed to the airport. 5 hours later, I saw Miss Monica, her hair now fully white. Her home looked almost exactly the same as it had when I was a child. She divorced her husband when she was young, never had kids, and lived alone ever since. I was just one of the many students she helped. Hundreds of us. But she always said, "You are all my children." Back then, I often came to her house. She cooked for me, tutored me. I had no parents. But to me, she was like a mother. Now, I'd come back to tell her about the decision I'd made. As I spoke, memories from my past life surfaced. The pain I'd never told her about. Back then, I only ever shared good news, never the bad. She always thought I was living a happy life. But this time, I chose a path I had never walked before, and I hoped she would give me her blessing. Miss Monica listened quietly, smiling the entire time. When I finished, she gently patted my hand and said, "You've come a long way, and it took strength to get here. I hope you never let anyone or anything hold you back. Stay true to yourself, always." Tears streamed down my face. Chapter 12. I stayed at Miss Monica's for 5 days. After all, I'd be going abroad soon. It wouldn't be easy to see her again once I left the country. During that time, Luis called and asked when I'd be coming back. He wanted to schedule a time for us to go pick out the wedding dress, so I applied for more time off from school and pushed it back a few more days, delaying it day by day. That was the plan. As I looked at the calendar, watching the date draw nearer, I couldn't help but feel a growing sense of anticipation. Chapter 13. I came home in a good mood, but that feeling quickly vanished, because my room was already occupied. Someone's clothes and personal items had taken over my space. My own belongings had been carelessly shoved into a corner. At the top of the pile, there was a sticky stain, looked like melted ice cream. Great. I already had a good idea of what happened. Just then, Luis and the others returned. He was walking in hand with Elias, laughing. Julia followed behind them. They looked just like a happy little family. I was the outsider now. "You're back?" Luis looked surprised to see me. Julia gave me a shy little wave. I kept a cold expression. Julia immediately ducked behind Luis, like a child who'd done something wrong. Tugging at his sleeve, Luis hesitated, looking awkward. Julia's husband showed up again. She was scared, staying out there alone, so I brought her here for a couple of nights. You weren't home, and your room was empty, so I let her and Elias use it. Ha. Sometimes, when you're too angry to speak, all you can do is laugh. Seriously? It's 2025. There are hotels, with security guards, with cameras. You're telling me staying with a mild-mannered university professor is safer than that? And it's not like we don't have phones. If they had called me, even once, I might not have been this upset. But no, they just threw my things out and moved right in. Then Luis and Julia noticed the ice cream stain. Luis frowned. Julia, seeing his expression, quickly stepped forward. "I'm so sorry, Selena. Elias made the mess by accident. I apologize on his behalf. I don't have any money right now. But I'll pay you back once I do. She looked like she was on the verge of tears, as if I were the one bullying her. Luis's frown deepened, but this time, it was directed at me. He's just a kid. It wasn't intentional. And it's not like anything important got ruined. Julia already apologized. What more do you want? He reached for my suitcase. Why don't you sleep in my room tonight? You just got back. Let's not ruin the mood. My heart sank. Again. Always the same. Every time there's a conflict with Julia, I'm the unreasonable one. I'm the one causing drama. I have to be the one to give in. But why should I? I stepped aside, avoiding his hand. His arm froze in the air. What are you doing? He looked at me, baffled. I met his eyes and said, First, I decide what's important to me, not you. Second, just because she apologized doesn't mean I have to accept it. And I don't. Third, I don't want to share a room with you. I grabbed my suitcase and walked out the door. Luis stood there, stunned. Selena! He called after me. I didn't look back. There was never any reason for us to live together in the first place. 19 days. Just 19 more days. And I'll be gone. Chapter 14. I left and booked a hotel. Took a cab straight there, since I hadn't unpacked my suitcase yet. It saved me the trouble. During that time, Luis called me several times. I blocked him. I had a great sleep at the hotel. The next day, I went back to teach. Everything went smoothly, until the end of class, when I heard a commotion outside. A student came rushing in. Miss Sue, Professor Luis is here. Her tone was filled with barely hidden excitement. I turned around. Sure enough, Luis was standing outside the classroom, looking at me tenderly. Chapter 15. Aw, Professor Luis is so handsome. He came to pick up Miss Sue. She's so lucky. They're getting married soon, right? So sweet. I frowned. I knew how popular Luis was on campus. Every one of his classes was packed. Some female students from other departments would come just to see him. When we first started dating, one obsessive student even sent me threatening letters. So we always kept a low profile, avoided each other in public, even came and went from campus separately. This was the first time he ever approached me like this in front of others. Swallowing my irritation, I walked up to him. Let's go. He naturally took my bag, and then my hand. I wanted to shake him off, but I didn't want to become gossip material over something so petty, so I endured it. We walked off together, under the stares of the students. It wasn't until I got into his car that I finally dropped the fake smile from my face. Chapter 16. Drop me off at the next corner. I'll take a cab back to the hotel. Luis let out a deep sigh. Selena, stop it. You were never this immature before. Everyone's worried about you. Julia didn't sleep a wink last night. She kept urging me to come get you. Elias has been crying too. He knows he was wrong to mess up your things. He'll apologize when we get home. Luis thought he was giving me a graceful way out. I looked at him, full of disappointment. Luis, do you really think this is all just about that? He fell silent. After a moment, he finally spoke. Selena, I know you're upset about me and Julia, but I promise you, there's nothing between us. I just feel sorry for her. That's all. Don't worry, I will marry you. I let out a cold laugh. He helped her because he felt sorry for her? He will marry me? So now, in his eyes, I've become the desperate one, clinging to him, begging for marriage, and our engagement? Just some grand act of charity he's bestowing on me. How ridiculous. I didn't bother to argue anymore. Luis kept driving, heading straight for his place. No sign of stopping. I didn't insist on going to the hotel again. After all, I still had some things at his place. Might as well pick everything up this time. Chapter 17. When we got home, Luis got a call before we even stepped through the door. The divorce lawyer he found for Julia had sorted the documents and sent them to the front desk. He said he'd go down and grab them, told me to head in first. I pushed open the door. Julia, hearing the sound, came out of the kitchen with a spatula in hand. Luis? Selena? You're back. I made a bunch of dishes to apologize to you. Selena. She stopped mid-sentence. When she saw it was just me, I gave her a mocking smile. Drop the act. I'm alone. Julia rolled her eyes and went back to the kitchen. I didn't bother with her. Headed straight to my room to grab the things I had already packed. But the moment I stepped in, I saw Elias pouring water over a clay bear. My expression turned cold. Chapter 18. Give that to me, I said sternly. That clay bear was a gift from Miss Monica. I had almost no toys as a child. She made that bear for me herself. It held deep meaning. I'd always cherished it. It had been in a glass cabinet, locked. Now Elias had it in his hands. No! Elias yelled, clutching it tightly. Julia heard the commotion and came over. She took in the scene, but didn't scold Elias. Didn't tell him to give it back. Instead, in a cool tone, she said, Selena, it's just a toy. Let him play with it. I glanced at her, then raised my voice at Elias. Give it to me. No, I won't. You're a mean, awful woman. I won't give it to you. He screamed at me, then raised the clay bear above his head, and smashed it to the ground. Crack. The bear shattered into pieces. What are you doing? In my panic, I shoved him. Elias fell onto the floor. That was the scene Luis walked into. Chapter 19. Elias burst into loud, dramatic sobs. Julia rushed over and scooped him up. Luis hurried to check him over, eyes full of panic. Once he saw that Elias was fine, he turned on me furiously. What happened? How could you lay a hand on a child? I was carefully collecting the shattered pieces of the clay bear. Luis saw them too, and with his intelligence, he should have instantly understood what had happened. He knew exactly what that bear meant to me. His face shifted, just slightly. Julia, meanwhile, put on her best heartbroken expression. Selena. Elias didn't mean it. He probably thought it was just a regular toy. He's just a kid. Wasn't your reaction a little too much? Thank God nothing serious happened. If it had, I don't know what we would have done. She covered her face and began to cry. Luis looked at her with deep concern. I let out a cold laugh. A regular toy? Would I put a regular toy in a glass cabinet under lock and key? My bear's in pieces. Your son's perfectly fine. I haven't even cried yet. And the two of you are already sobbing like victims. Elias was too young to understand, but Julia's expression turned awkward. Luis looked guilty. Selena. He reached out to me. I stepped back, grabbed my few remaining belongings, and walked out the door. As I left, Julia shot me a venomous glare. Chapter 20. Maybe Luis finally realized. I was truly angry this time. He didn't force me to come home again. I stayed in the hotel, peacefully. The only place we crossed paths was at school. He played the devoted fiancé, bringing me breakfast, giving me little gifts. From the outside, we looked like a loving couple, but only I knew it was all just for show. A few days later, Roxana called to tell me my application had been approved. I went to sign the papers. Afterward, Roxana grabbed my arm playfully, eyes full of gossip. Hey, did you and Luis break up? I froze. What makes you think that? Oh please, everyone's talking about it, Roxana said dramatically. Apparently, someone had sent an anonymous tip to the campus forum. It claimed Luis was living with another woman, and even included photos. Photos of them shopping together, looking very close. Although the post was taken down quickly, the rumors had already started spreading. I narrowed my eyes, thinking, from Roxana's description, the woman in the photos was likely Julia. I had no idea someone had exposed them, and based on how Luis had been acting recently, it didn't seem like he knew either. In my last life, I had stayed at home, so this situation never happened. But this time, was it the butterfly effect of my changed decision? Either way, it didn't matter much. There were only 10 days left. 10 days. And I'd be gone. I gave Roxana a casual answer, then made an excuse to leave. Chapter 21. The rumors about Luis kept growing. A few days later, Some coworkers came to me gossiping again. After class, even a few students asked me about it. I responded with silence every time. One night, I got a call. I had just fallen asleep when an unfamiliar number lit up my phone. Half asleep, I picked up. Luis's angry voice exploded through the speaker. "Selena, I can't believe you do this. You know Julia and I are innocent. How could you go around spreading rumors? Now everyone's bashing Julia. Are you happy now? I told you, I'm going to marry you. What more do you want?" I was stunned by his outburst. It took me a few seconds to realize what he was talking about, combining what had been going on recently. I understood right away. Luis had heard the rumors, and assumed I was the one who leaked them. That's why he'd called me in a panic, but I didn't argue. I waited until he calmed down a little, then said, "Luis, first of all, I didn't do anything, and I don't need to prove that to you. Believe what you want. If you actually care, you'll find out the truth yourself. Secondly, as for that generous promise to marry me, keep it. I don't want it anymore." "Selena, what do you mean by, hey, you explain." I hung up before he could finish, blocked his number, turned off the lights, went right back to sleep. My study abroad spot is already confirmed. Luis can't change a thing. 5 days. That's all I have left. Chapter 22. When I woke up the next morning, I finally learned the full story. After the first anonymous post appeared online, some negative comments started popping up about Luis, accusing him of cheating. Mostly, one of his fans, a student who'd always admired him, refused to believe it. So she started digging, trying to prove the rumors false. But the more she investigated, the more she realized the rumors were actually true. Her world collapsed. She immediately switched sides, went from fan to critic. Then she wrote a new post. She laid out all the evidence she had found. Luis and Julia's connection. When Julia had shown up, when I'd moved out, her tone was full of disgust toward Luis and sympathy for me. At the end of the post, she even apologized to me. She said that when she first found out I was dating Luis, she had insulted me, but now, seeing Luis's true nature, she wanted me to know, "Don't be sad, he's not worth it." The post blew up on the campus forum. I heard the school administration even called Luis in for a talk. No wonder he lost it last night. That wasn't like him at all. But what does that have to do with me? I've already handed over all my responsibilities. I don't even have to go to school anymore. All I have to do is prepare to leave. Chapter 23. 5 days passed in the blink of an eye. The day I went to the airport, the weather was beautiful. What surprised me was seeing Luis there. He had been waiting for me. He looked tired. There were dark circles under his eyes and stubble along his jaw. He apologized. He told me he had investigated and found out that the first post online was actually made by Julia. Why? Because after I moved out, Luis started trying to win me back, bringing me breakfast, sending me little gifts. Julia had sensed the shift, felt threatened, so she exposed their relationship online, hoping to frame me, to push Luis back toward her. She never expected a student would dig up the full story, causing the whole thing to blow up in her face. Luis's image as the cool, aloof professor was ruined. Now he was just a man, with a fiancée he didn't cherish, still tangled in his past. Julia's plan? Completely backfired. Luis told me he'd finally seen her true colors. He had already made her leave. When he finished, his eyes were red. "Selena, I regret it. Please forgive me." But without hesitation, I let go of his hand and walked onto the plane. I looked out the window. Blue skies stretched out above the clouds. I was above the clouds, and from now on, so will my life be.